On a sunny afternoon, a man named Frank was released from prison after 14 years. He used to be a powerful mafia boss who ran many illegal businesses in New York City. But when he got out, he realized everything had changed. His power was gone. Drug gangs from Colombia and China had taken over the drug and prostitution trades, and all of Frank's old allies were either gone or taken down. In another part of the city, Emilio, a Colombian crime boss who ran a prostitution business, had just walked out of one of his places when someone suddenly attacked him. Gunshots rang out, and Emilio was killed instantly. The killer left his body behind as a warning. Around the same time, a news article came out saying that Frank had just been released from prison. At a nearby hotel, a man named Jimmy was trying to make a drug deal with King Tito, a Colombian drug lord. But Jimmy talked too much, which annoyed Tito. Suddenly, Tito raised the price by 10%, surprising Jimmy. Jimmy didn't have a choice, so he unwillingly gave Tito a suitcase full of cash to get the crates of drugs. But when they opened the suitcase, it was full of sanitary pads instead of money. While everyone was still shocked, Jimmy quickly pulled out a gun and shot King Tito and his men. After killing the Colombian group, Jimmy and his team said they would be meeting Frank again soon. At another hotel, it was revealed that Jimmy's crew was the one who killed Emilio. Frank also arrived and was warmly welcomed by their boss. Jimmy told him that both Emilio and King Tito had been taken out as planned. They also took all the money and property from the two drug lords. Then Jimmy told Frank about a meeting with a middleman named Delicio, who really wanted to see him. Frank got ready and went to a fancy meeting place, where a group of lawyers, some politicians, and a district judge were waiting to welcome him. Frank later met Delicio in person and asked him to set up a meeting with a drug lord named Clay. Frank acted like he wanted to get back into the business. After Delicio left, Frank took his advisor, Jennifer, for a walk through the subway. At the same time, Delicio went to a casino to meet Clay, who was having fun with his friends. Delicio gave Clay Frank's message, but Clay said no right away. He even made fun of Frank for working with rival drug lords and said he only wanted to work with the Colombians. Clay then told Delicio to go back and tell Frank he wasn't interested. The story continues on a busy subway train where Frank and Jennifer are talking and enjoying their time. Suddenly, 3 thugs walk up and try to start trouble with Frank. But when they see a gun hidden under his coat, they get scared. Instead of fighting, Frank surprises them. He gives them a stack of cash and tells them to come see him at the hotel later. Later, Delicio told Frank that Clay had agreed to meet. Frank and his team quickly went to the meeting place. During the meeting, Frank said that from now on, all business had to go through him, but Clay refused to work with him. Without waiting, Frank pulled out a gun and shot Clay dead. After that, Frank started bringing back his old partners to help him rebuild his empire. Frank later met with the mayor and asked why the money for a hospital in the Bronx hadn't been given yet. The mayor said the budget was never approved and told Frank that if he wanted the hospital built, he'd have to raise $16 million himself. Even though his lawyer told him to forget about it, Frank surprised everyone by accepting the challenge. While Frank was having a drink at a bar, 3 detectives, Tommy, Roy, and Dennis, suddenly arrived and took him away. His lawyer tried to step in, but they ignored him. The detectives drove Frank against the traffic flow to avoid being followed or leaving any trail behind. They brought Frank to a quiet alley where a man named Enrico was lying hurt and unconscious. The detectives thought Frank had something to do with it, but he said he didn't know anything. This made them angry, but they had no proof, so they had to let him go. Enrico was actually a Colombian drug lord. The detectives believed Frank was behind the deaths of the 3 other drug lords, since everything started happening after he got out of prison. Meanwhile, Delicio secretly met with Wang, a triad boss from China, at a movie theater to deliver a business message from Frank. Wang said he wanted cash for a 220-pound shipment, knowing that Frank didn't have the money. Delicio then suggested that Wang and Frank meet in person to talk and try to work out a deal that would benefit them both. The next day, Jimmy went to a fast food restaurant. While there, he kindly gave some money to an elderly woman and her grandchildren. Suddenly, detectives and police showed up and set up an ambush. Jimmy was surrounded and had no way to run, so they arrested him right away. He was charged with killing several Colombians, and Enrico's testimony was used as proof against him. Meanwhile, Frank visited a hospital in the Bronx that was in bad shape and badly needed government funding. He talked to Wang again about the shipment deal, but they still couldn't agree on the price. Frank offered a new idea. They could sell the shipment together and split the profits to help the hospital. But Wang refused and said he still wanted full payment in cash. When Frank got back to the hotel, he heard that Jimmy had been arrested. Wanting to save him, Frank told his crew to act that same night. He put Jennifer and the team in charge of the mission. They managed to break Jimmy out successfully. Later, when the 3 detectives showed up, they were angry to see that Jimmy was already gone. Jennifer warned the detectives that if they didn't cooperate, the case would go to court. Soon after, in Chinatown, Frank and his crew found the Chinese gangs. They moved fast and attacked hard, wiping out the entire gang. After that, Frank caught Wang and forced him to give up all his money and assets. But even after Wang gave everything, Frank still didn't let him go. Wang was taken care of soon after. A few days later, the hospital in the Bronx officially opened thanks to Frank's big donation. This made Detective Dennis very angry. He felt like Frank had become the king of New York, while he and the other detectives were left doing boring and useless work. Dennis believed the legal system was unfair, and that Frank had too much money and knew how to use the law to stay out of trouble. Dennis came up with a bold plan. He wanted a group of detectives to attack Frank and make it look like a gang fight. Roy didn't agree with the idea, but Dennis didn't listen. One night, at a busy nightclub, Frank's crew was having a party while Frank was on a phone call. A short time later, Delicio showed up with a drug lord from Los Angeles. The man knew Frank had a 200-pound shipment from Wang and wanted to buy it, but he couldn't pay the full price right away. He offered to pay half now and the rest after selling the goods in Los Angeles. Frank said no and made it clear he would only sell if he got all the money up front. The man then asked to see the shipment before making a decision. Suddenly, as the man stepped outside, he pulled out a gun and shot one of Frank's bodyguards, killing him. It was then clear that Delicio had been secretly working with him. Right after that, a group of armed men rushed in, causing chaos and starting a violent shootout. In the middle of the gunfire, Frank quickly helped Jimmy escape. But as they drove off, one of the attackers grabbed onto their car door. When Jimmy tried to knock him off, they realized he was actually a cold and ruthless cop. Frank quickly grabbed a fire extinguisher and used it to knock the man out. When the other attackers saw what happened, they ran away and reported back to Chase. It was then revealed that the attackers were actually detectives Tommy and Dennis. A high-speed chase followed, with gunfire flying back and forth. After a long and intense pursuit, Frank finally got away safely. Tommy and Dennis lost sight of Frank and Jimmy in the car area. While they were still looking, Frank suddenly drove his car straight into theirs, causing a big crash. In the confusion, Jimmy started shooting and ran off to make his escape. Tommy quickly jumped out of the car and ran after him. Meanwhile, Dennis looked through the wrecked car but couldn't find Frank anywhere. Under the bridge, a gunshot suddenly rang out and hit Tommy. Jimmy didn't stop. He fired more shots, leaving Tommy badly wounded. But then, in a sudden turn of events, Dennis showed up and shot Jimmy several times, killing him instantly. Dennis ran to help Tommy, but it was too late. Tommy had died. Heartbroken and filled with guilt over losing his partner, Dennis was overcome with sadness and despair. Dennis couldn't handle the sadness at the funeral, so he left and got into his car. But just as he sat down, another car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down and Frank was inside. Without saying a word, Frank shot Dennis and killed him, then calmly drove away. Later, Frank went back to his headquarters, where Delicio had been caught by his men and was waiting for him. During the questioning, Delicio admitted that Enrico had worked with the police to bring Frank down. He also said he was paid $50 million and promised freedom if he gave up the location of Frank's headquarters. After hearing this, Frank ordered his men to bury Delicio alive, along with the blood-stained money. That night, Delicio went home, nervous and scared, only to find Frank already there waiting for him. Frank then calmly admitted that he had killed Clay, who made $13 million from gambling scams, Wang, a Chinatown businessman involved in human trafficking, and King Taito, who ran a child prostitution ring in New York. Frank defended what he did, saying he only got rid of bad people, those who deserved to die, even if they claimed to fight for justice. Before leaving, he warned that he would hire a hitman to kill anyone involved in his case. Then, as part of his plan, Frank told Roy to handcuff him to a chair. But once Frank left, Roy quickly broke free and chased after him to the subway station. Inside a train car, Frank grabbed a passenger to use as a human shield. Roy begged him to surrender, but Frank didn't stop. He coldly shot and killed Roy. After that, Frank calmly walked out of the station and got into a taxi. But it was only then he realized he had been badly shot by Roy. At the same time, the police were alerted about the shooting and quickly came to the scene. The taxi driver saw that Frank had a gun, so he got out right away and told the police. A few moments later, officers surrounded the taxi. Because of the heavy blood loss and his serious injuries, Frank became weaker and eventually died inside the car. The story teaches an important lesson: live peacefully, follow the law, and stay away from crime. Choosing a life of crime only brings pain, chaos, and a tragic ending. It's always better to be a good, law-abiding person than to chase power as a criminal leader.